To those of you who are not from our part of the world, you might think there's no real difference between a New Zealand accent and an Australian accent. Being mistaken for an Australian is one of the most common annoyances Kiwis experience when travelling overseas. The two accents certainly do have a lot in common, but they do have a lot of differences as well.
Our accents are completely different. They're like, where's the car? And we're like, where's the car?
New Zealand's a pretty young country, and as a result, we don't really have regional accents, except for one region in the bottom of the South Island, imaginatively named Southland. Instead, there's a sort of base New Zealand accent, which varies a bit depending on social backgrounds. It's hard to pin down exactly, but there's a slightly posher accent among more educated Kiwis.
This is the thing you learned about television as opposed to radio. Television is resource heavy.
That you'd probably encounter more often in the bigger cities like Auckland or Wellington. And a quote-unquote broader accent.
Yesterday in Australia, a new job in the mining sector was advertised every 6 minutes.
In more suburban and rural areas of the country, but this isn't really necessarily a hard and fast rule. There's also a fairly distinct Māori accent.
Oh, tēnā koutou. Last night up north, somebody stole a toilet seat out of the Kaikohe police station. Now the cops got nothing to go on.
Which is, of course, more common amongst Māori. But again, it's not a hard and fast rule, and sometimes you do meet non-Māori who speak with this accent. So where does this base New Zealand accent come from? Let's take a quick look at how the accent came to be. Like I said before, New Zealand's a young country, and English was first spoken here in about the early 19th century by whalers who were mostly operating out of Australia, but later set up shop around parts of New Zealand as well. As the 19th century progressed, British interest in New Zealand began to rise, and a lot of European whalers, settlers, traders, and so on were coming into New Zealand mostly through the colony of New South Wales in Australia. In fact, New Zealand was eventually included as part of the colony of New South Wales until 1840, when the Treaty of Waitangi was signed between the British Crown and various Māori tribes, and the colony of New Zealand was established.
Now, I would like to buy the beach. All right? Now, would you accept 26 muskets, 6 barrels of gunpowder, 24 axes, some beads for your women, quantity of tobacco for your men, and some glue for your children? How say you, Savage?
Haven't you got any money?
So right from the get-go in New Zealand, you can see that the English language was massively influenced by Australia. Australia continued to have a big influence on New Zealand English throughout the rest of the 19th century as more and more Australians came to New Zealand to either dig for gold, dig for gum, and dig for sheep. At certain points in the latter half of the 19th century, the majority of immigrants into New Zealand were Australian. But as New Zealand became its own self-governing colony, more and more immigrants were coming from elsewhere. The British quickly earmarked New Zealand to become a settler colony, and throughout the late 1800s, thousands of people took advantage of schemes to settle in New Zealand via the again imaginatively named New Zealand Company. Through the New Zealand Company, people could get free passage and a plot of land to work in New Zealand, provided that they worked on that land for X amount of years, and after that time period, they could keep that land. Obviously, a lot of these new settlers came from England, but around half of them in the late 1800s were from Scotland and Ireland. A lot of the Scottish decided to settle in Otago and Southland, the coldest and wettest part of New Zealand. And that might explain the regional accent down there. So gradually, there was this base of Australian English that was being changed by steady migration of folks from the British Isles, as well as contact with local Māori. I think it's interesting to note that right up until World War II, New Zealand English still had quite a lot in common with Australian English, more so than it does today. My grandparents, for example, both of them were born after World War I, and I can remember them both using a lot of slang and phrases that most people would associate with Australia. My grandfather had a habit of calling anything good corker, as in, it's a corker party. In other words, it's a good party. My grandmother would even call us silly galahs if we were acting up as kids. Galahs are a distinctly native Australian bird, and I often wondered why she would use this term, seeing as she never actually lived in Australia. After World War II is when you see or hear the New Zealand accent develop a lot more of its unique characteristics. This was a time when even more immigrants flooded into the country and started to influence the way we speak even more. You had a lot of Brits settle down in New Zealand after the war, but there was also a pretty decent number of Dutch people who came over as well. As the post-war labour shortage continued in the 1950s and 60s, large numbers of Pacific Islanders moved to New Zealand, mostly from Samoa, Tonga and Fiji. It was at around this time also that New Zealand's national identity was becoming stronger and more distinct, and as a result, the more Kiwi way of speaking was becoming more accepted and widespread in national broadcasting and the media. Up until around the late 1960s, the very British RP accent, or received pronunciation as it's known, was considered the most cultured and correct form of English by many in New Zealand society. The best example of this concept was the fact that most radio and TV announcements in New Zealand at the time were all done in the British RP accent. If you find any audio from broadcasts made in New Zealand in the 40s, 50s and 60s, you'd swear the announcers were very posh upper-class Brits.
New Zealand is 12,000 miles from Great Britain and over 1,000 miles from Australia. However, fast air links have now placed New Zealand within a few days of the world's great centres. Yet shipping is still our lifeline.
I know this was a thing in Australia as well, and I'd be interested to know what the situation was like in other Commonwealth Anglophone countries like Canada, for example. But by the 1970s, this obsession with mimicking the accents of posh private school boys from England had all but disappeared in New Zealand, and it was now okay to speak New Zealand on TV.
Hello, Tawa, and good evening, New Zealand.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We made it just.
Yes.
Yes, we did. And thanks to Vislath Cheng for the opening gag. This Milton Bradley game is on its way to you right now.
So that's a brief history of where the New Zealand accent comes from. In summary, as much as it pains a lot of New Zealanders to admit, a lot of our accent is the product of Australian migrants coming into New Zealand during our early history, and then changes via immigrants mostly from the UK and Ireland, as well as contact with local Māori and just overall time in isolation. In the next video, we'll look at some common examples of what makes modern-day New Zealand accents distinct from other accents in the English-speaking world. If you know any good examples that I should include, or if you think I missed out some important information about the New Zealand accent's history, why not leave them in the comments? So in the last video, we learned a little bit about where the New Zealand accent comes from. If you didn't see the last video and want to learn more about the history of the New Zealand accent, check it out over here. In this video, we'll take a look at what the New Zealand accent sounds like today, and maybe even think about what the accent might sound like in the future. One of the first things people often notice about the New Zealand accent is its vowels, or some people have commented, its lack of vowels. While a lot of Kiwis make fun of Australians for overdoing their vowels so that they end up saying things like fish and chips, Australians and other English speakers like to point out that we like to completely swallow the vowels altogether in the same phrase, so we end up saying the famously New Zealand English phrase of "fish and chops." The complete destruction of the letter I and its vowels in New Zealand English is probably one of the most iconic features of our accent. But our war on other English vowels and diphthongs is also well known and documented. It's not that we completely hate the letter I, it's just that we feel like it should be moved to other words. A great example of this is in words with the letter E. So in a slightly broader New Zealand accent, you'd say the words like pen, bed, or the number 7. Many foreigners are often completely confused by New Zealanders asking them seemingly simple questions like, "Do you have a pen?" and are left asking themselves, "Why would I be carrying a pin?" It's potentially confusing, but not exactly a life or death matter.
You just don't know. You hear a lot of terrible things happening. He may be dead.
He maybe did what?
He may be dead.
Yeah, I know, but what did he maybe do?
He may be dead.
Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. What did he maybe do?
No, he may be dead.
Are you guys fucking with me?
Another feature of New Zealand English that you might recognize is in the I sound that you can hear in words like hi, pie, and sky. New Zealanders with a broader accent pronounce this sound in a way that sort of rhymes with toy, but not exactly the same. The best example of a fairly prominent New Zealander with a broad accent these days is the politician Simon Bridges, or as he's often referred to in New Zealand as Simon Bridges.
It was fantastic. Really enjoyed it, and I've never been before, but just the vibe, the warmth, the love. Frankly, I thought it was fantastic.
One other hallmark of broad New Zealand accents that Simon doesn't really demonstrate much of is high-rising terminal, or HRT for short. It's that habit of saying everything like it's a question, and it can get really confusing for some people because they think you're asking them for something. HRT isn't unique to New Zealand English, but it's pretty common in New Zealand, and it's especially more common in Māori English. It's something that a lot of New Zealanders can become a bit conscious about if they spend any length of time overseas, because HRT is often seen by English speakers around the world as something that's incorrect or even a bit uncultured. What do you think? Personally, as a New Zealander, I find it completely normal in daily conversation, but I would cringe a bit if I heard someone like our Prime Minister or some other public figure using it. To any other Kiwis watching, do you consciously try to not use HRT in more formal situations? I know I do. One other really common thing you might notice when you hear New Zealanders speak is adding an extra vowel to some past participle verbs ending in an N, like known, shown, or grown. Some, but not all New Zealanders put an extra schwa vowel into the sound, so it sounds like shown, grown, or known. I'm not really sure how or why this pattern came to be, but it's probably something around half of New Zealanders do in their speech these days. In the last video, I mentioned how we don't really have regional accents in New Zealand, except for an area at the bottom of the South Island called Southland, where they characteristically roll their R's. New Zealand and Australian English is known by most English speakers for being non-rhotic. Rhotic just means rolling your R's in words like car, girl, and farm. You'll notice how I said these words in a more quote-unquote typical way of New Zealand pronunciation, because I'm not from Southland and I can't actually roll my R's very well. But take a listen to how Southlanders pronounce words that have an R in the middle of them.
Girl, bird, nurse, work, here's.
Yeah, you do roll your R's, eh?
We're just going to read the words together. First one, girl. Second one, bird, nurse, work, here's.
This is a regional accent that came about because most European settlers to Southland were originally from Scotland. And if there's one thing Scottish people loved doing at the time, it was packing up to seek fortune and a new life in the coldest, wettest part of a new country, and of course rolling their R's. You can always spot a Southlander in New Zealand by their tendency to roll their R's as well as their love for bland food. Well, we've spent the last two videos looking at where the New Zealand accent came from, how it sounds these days, and some common characteristics of it. But of course, languages are always changing, so what is the accent going to sound like in the future? Well, I don't have a crystal ball, so how should I know? But there is one thing I've noticed, and others have picked up on it too. Remember how I said that the Southland accent is famous for rolling its R's? Well, rolling your R's seems to be something that's popping up in the speech of more and more young New Zealanders these days. This seems to have started amongst young Polynesian kids in South Auckland, which is famous for its large Polynesian community, and it's spread to some kids and younger people in other parts of New Zealand too. Where does it come from? Some linguists are saying that it's coming from the popularity of American music and culture in the Polynesian community. Personally, I think maybe yes and maybe no. I mean, American hip-hop culture in New Zealand is nothing new. I was a teen in the 90s in New Zealand, which was when American hip-hop and rap exploded amongst teens in the country, and I never really noticed anyone my age trying to change their speech to sound something more typically American. Is this the future of the New Zealand accent? It could be, but I don't know at this stage because I hear it in some but not all young people. I mean, it could be just a teenage fad that eventually dies out. Who knows? I tried hard to find some examples of this new type of speech, but it's really hard to find some. If I do find some examples, I'll add them to another video in the future. So there's a quick look at some of the more common features of the New Zealand accent. Obviously, there's a lot more features that make up the New Zealand accent, and if you think there are some really important things that I've missed here, let me know about them in the comments. Also for the comments, whether you're a New Zealander or not, what do you think of the New Zealand accent? Are you a fan of it or not?
Have you any whiskey?
Whiskey?
A large glass, if you will. A large glass, if you will.
Over the past decade or so, New Zealand has become a lot more well-known internationally, and has become a sort of apple of the eye by some around the world even. As a result, one of the things that's become more common in a lot of English-speaking media, movies, TV and so on, is to create and feature characters from New Zealand. Perhaps one of the best examples of this was the casting of veteran Kiwi actor Temuera Morrison as Jango Fett in the Star Wars prequel Attack of the Clones. Tim was later cast in all subsequent Star Wars movies and live-action shows as either Jango's clone son Boba and the Clone Troopers. They even dubbed out Boba Fett's voice in the original Star Wars movies and replaced it with Tim's to create continuity in the Star Wars timeline. But Tim's sexy, gravelly, authentic New Zealand accent has been an exception, not the norm when it comes to New Zealand accents in Hollywood. A lot of the time, Hollywood producers either can't or won't hire a New Zealand actor to portray a character from New Zealand, and the results are usually frightening.
New Zealand, New Zealand, New Zealand.
Today, I'm going to listen to a few well-noted examples of actors from around the world attempting to do a New Zealand accent. And as a New Zealander, I'm going to try and critique them as objectively as possible. First up, let's take a look at Sir Anthony Hopkins' Kiwi accent in the 2005 film The World's Fastest Indian. In the movie, Sir Anthony plays Burt Munro, a motorcycle racer from Invercargill in New Zealand, who famously heavily modified his 1920s Indian racer motorbike to break the world speed record at the Bonneville Salt Flats in Utah in the 1960s. Let's have a listen to Sir Anthony's take on the New Zealand accent.
Ever since I was a lad, I've been interested in things that go fast.
167.921 miles per hour.
You know, at Bonneville, things go real fast. The plan is for me to catch a boat to the US of A to drive up to Utah, to the Bonneville Salt Flats.
193.728.
You know, one of the few places on Earth where you can find out just what your machine is capable of.
You know what time it is?
Oh, sorry, I've got a heck of a lot to get done today.
Aren't you scared you'll kill yourself if you crash?
You live more in 5 minutes than some people live in a lifetime.
Good luck.
Yeah, I'll bring you back the Statue of Liberty.
What exactly do you intend to do here in the United States?
I'll set a land speed record.
You know how fast you were going back there?
Yeah, about 150, 160 miles an hour.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
You're not from around these parts.
From down under, outside the world.
Welcome to Hollywood.
I can't believe it. I've been on here.
Are yours?
Yeah, it's an old Indian.
What is this?
It's a cork. What does it look like? It's a cork from a brandy bottle.
Okay, so I've heard worse, but I've also heard a lot better, I think. Straight off the bat, we hear him say, fast. And it's not how a Kiwi would pronounce it at all. He's gone for a sort of a halfway house sound between the more Kiwi sound of fast and the more American or even West Country English accent of fast. He also says salt in salt flats like an upper class English person. I'll give him some credit though for trying to incorporate some of the Southland accent in his speech by rolling his R's, because that's where Burt Munro was from. If you're unaware of the Southland accent in New Zealand, check out my previous video on the topic. He tries to roll his R's in the words ever, earth, and down under. It's kind of a nice attempt, I guess. But listening to him in the trailer here, he's kind of all over the place, and I can't really pin down any single accent. Sometimes he sounds a bit like a posh Englishman, sometimes he sounds like he's from the West Country in England, and sometimes it's almost a little bit South African. But I'd never really say he sounds like a New Zealander at all. He does one surprising thing when he says it's an old Indian. Like, he produces a really flat sound in the word old. It sounds like old, which is something I've typically heard Americans do whenever they're trying to do any other English accent. It's a bit surprising from Sir Anthony here. Overall, I'd give him 4 LNPs out of 10. It's not horrible to listen to, it's just not very Kiwi though. Next up, let's take a look at the American voice actor D. Bradley Baker, who voices the Clone Troopers in Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Now, Lucasfilm and Disney either couldn't afford or get access to Temuera Morrison to voice their iteration of the Clone Troopers, so they went with established American voice actor D. Bradley Baker. As much as I love the Clone Wars series, the Clone Troopers accent has never seemed right to me. I hate to say it, but D. Bradley Baker can't do a New Zealand accent or anything that closely resembles it. I'd say his biggest fault in the accent is his vowels or diphthongs.
What do you know? All clear! Just like the last 100 times I looked at it.
Personally, I like that it's so quiet out here. I can catch up on the rig manuals.
Echo, what is wrong with you? We should be out in the front lines, blasting droids.
Leave him alone. They kept him in his growth jar too long.
Okay, so in this clip, you hear the troopers say things like, just the last 100 times, or we should be on the front lines, blasting droids. The I and R sounds are two sounds that I've noticed many American actors really struggle to do when they're trying another English accent from outside of North America. A New Zealander would typically say those lines somewhat similar to, just like the last 100 times, and we should be on the front lines blasting droids. Something like that. Like many other Americans attempting a New Zealand or British or Australian accent, D. Bradley Baker ends up with a more American-sounding last and a loins instead of lines. I'd say that overall, too much of his native American accent creeps in when he's voicing the clones. I'll give him 3 Jaffas out of 10. I am pretty used to this version of the clones' voices by now, and I'll admit that any other voice would probably sound strange to me. But as something that was supposed to mimic Temuera Morrison's New Zealand accent, it's pretty far off. The third example we have here is Ben Kingsley attempting to be a Māori character in the 2013 movie Ender's Game. Let's have a listen.
You can't absorb these kind of losses. War isn't a game where you get to reboot and start over. That can't happen, understand?
Yes, sir.
Do you? Because I've trained others, each one ultimately a failure.
All right, Colonel. He understands.
So I'm not the first.
No, but you will be the last.
Yeah, I'm not even sure they gave Ben Kingsley any accent training at all for this film. In the lines we hear in this clip, he just sounds like a Cockney Londoner who's trying to sound a tiny bit exotic. That's all I can hear in this clip. It sounds as if he would have been great voicing the orcs in the Lord of the Rings movies, who all had rough working class Cockney accents. Based on this clip where it doesn't even sound like he's trying to do a different accent at all, he's getting a 2 Jandals out of 10. And finally, let's listen to Steve Guttenberg in the 1990 movie Don't Tell Her It's Me. Now, I remember seeing this movie on TV when I was younger, and it really stuck in my memory because Steve Guttenberg was meant to be portraying a biker from New Zealand. The character's name is Lobo Marunga, which sounds like an Australian Aboriginal name if you ask me. He's meant to be a mysterious biker from New Zealand.
Didn't expect to see you here today.
I don't know your name.
Lobo Marunga.
Lobo? Where did you say you're from? Bavaria?
New Zealand.
I could have rang for a bloody cab from any one of those booths we passed.
Have you any whiskey?
Whiskey?
Haven't you got anything with a bit of hair on it? A bit of bite to it?
I've got some gin.
Just the gin, please. A large glass, if you will. A large glass, if you will.
Spirits for the spirits. It's an old Mary custom. Some would say superstition. But it reminds me of ham. And a man needs a bit of ham in his pocket.
What are you doing?
I thought you'd show me the scenic wonders hereabouts.
I like you, Emily Pierre.
Oh, I really better be pushing on now.
Okay, so before I get onto the many bad things regarding his New Zealand accent here, I'll give him some credit. He's obviously been told that a feature of New Zealand accents is pronouncing the I sound in words like whiskey and spirits like an sound. Also, the way he tries to say New Zealand cracks me up. He's made some effort for sure there. The rest of his accent though, it's bad, like nails on a blackboard bad. Again, he's got a really bad case of Americans getting all of the vowels and diphthongs completely wrong, especially in his O sounds when he says Lobo and home, which in the movie sound like Lobo and home. Also, his pronunciation of Māori is pretty bad. At first, I was wondering who Mary was when he mentioned a Mary custom, but he points at the charm around his neck, and I put 2 and 2 together. And speaking of the thing around his neck, what is that? It looks like a cat. I've never seen a traditional Māori cat pendant before. It's almost as if this entire character was just built around 4 things: a mullet, A t-shirt from New Zealand that the producer's nephew bought while on a trip to New Zealand, a gay biker's Leatherman outfit, and a cat pendant from the Chinatown market. I do really like Steve Guttenberg. He comes across as a genuinely nice guy in Hollywood, but his Kiwi accent in this film is horrendously bad. In fact, it's getting -1 jelly tips. It's just that awful. So those were a few well-noted and ill-fated attempts by big-time Hollywood actors trying to do a New Zealand accent. Now, obviously, I'm not criticizing the actors themselves here. Doing another accent is hard, but I'm sure for the right amount of money, I'd give it a bloody good shot. In fact, if you want a genuine New Zealand accent in your next big movie or TV series and you can't get Cliff Curtis, just DM me. In any case, at least none of the actors in today's video were as bad as this guy.
Do I bother you?
Don't waste yourself.
What's your style?
My style? You can call it the art of fighting without fighting.
The art of fighting without fighting? Show me some of it.
Later.
To any New Zealanders who listen to these attempts, I'm very, very sorry. Go put some eardrops in and try to repair the damage done. To any non-New Zealanders, what did you think of these attempts at a Kiwi accent? Can you imitate a New Zealand accent? Leave your thoughts and ideas in the comments below. Welcome to another video, and in this video we're going to have a bit of a treat. How to speak New Zealand English. And we're going to learn how to speak New Zealand English from the very best source there is out there, WikiHow, which is the site where you can learn to do anything. So what better place than to learn how to speak like a Kiwi? Alright, so this article on WikiHow was co-authored by Andrea Thompson, a New Zealand resident nonetheless. Updated July 13th, 2024. Wow, it's only 2 days ago. Given 3 and nearly 4 stars. Considered mostly helpful. Alright, well let's see how helpful that is. English as spoken in New Zealand, NZ, Aotearoa does not vary greatly from the English spoken in the UK, the USA, Canada, blah, 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 blah. Although the largest influence on New Zealand English is the Australian accent and dialect. Yeah, historically, I think. You'll be understood by Kiwis if you speak the version of the English language that is native to you, or the etc, etc, etc. Yeah, okay, let's just get straight onto the lessons. I want to learn how to speak New Zealand English. And so do you, probably. So let's get into it. Oh, here we go. Easy tips for doing a New Zealand accent. Okay, draw out the vowel E into a E sound. So 10 minutes should sound like 10 minutes. I will see you in 10 minutes. I don't know anybody who talks like that, let alone any New Zealander. Sounds a little bit like an old-fashioned James Bond villain. In 10 minutes, Mr. Bond, you are going to die. Pronounce the short A sound like a long O. So awesome should sound like awesome. Well, I mean, I'm saying this in basically a Kiwi accent. Okay, so they're spelling it out like or, as in what you row a boat with. Awesome. Yeah, that's pretty correct, I reckon. Pronounce the other A sounds. Could they be a little more specific? Which A sounds? Like a long E. So hands should sound like hens. Hands should sound like hens. I'm not sure I'm representative of all New Zealand accents, but to me there's a difference there. Hands versus hens. Make sure you shake his hand. I don't know about that. Yeah, something sounds a bit off. Okay, part 1. Here we go, into the lessons. Learning New Zealand English pronunciation. Data. Okay, so apparently Americans say data. British people say data. Okay, yeah, like Captain Picard, Mr. Data. And New Zealanders say data. Data. Yeah, that's true. I got a new data plan for my phone. Yeah, I say that, yeah. The New Zealand dialects have similar but not identical pronunciations to American and British words. Learning common differences in pronunciation will help you communicate easily and avoid easy misunderstandings. This is going to be important. All right, New Zealand English speakers will pronounce the word data like it is often pronounced in American English. Data. Yeah, okay, we just went through that. Debut. Okay, notice I said debut is pronounced debut. Debut in American English. Almost unrecognizable from the usual UK and American pronunciation. Yeah, I'd say debut. Oh, I don't know now. One of those two. Okay, lesson 2. Listen to natives' vowel pronunciation. Listen to a native's vowel pronunciation. They may have fact-checked this article, but they didn't grammar check it very well. A significant part of the pronunciation difference between American and British English and New Zealand English lies in the vowel. The vowel. We only have one. To imitate the New Zealand accent, move the base of your tongue farther back in your mouth, and when you are saying say ah. Move the base of your tongue farther back in your mouth. I'm not sure what they're talking about there. Yeah, you give that a go and please tell me what sound you produced. Let's get on to... okay, here we go. Classic Kiwi English coming out right here. Fush and chops. Flatten your vowels. This is one of the most notable pronunciation oddities of New Zealand English. Vowels are altered so they nearly all sound the same. Do they? Well, I think we probably eliminate vowels more than anything. I don't know about flatten them out. Just vowels are completely gone from some words. For example, although there is a marked difference between the vowel sounds in the word near and square, the vowel sounds are the same in New Zealand English. Near, square. I don't know. It feels and sounds different to me. What do you reckon? Okay, what do we have next? Okay, this looks like rising intonation. Not exclusive to New Zealand English. Pretty famous in that Valley Girl accent from California. This would sound something like, it was very hot. Yeah, Kiwis do that quite a lot, especially Kiwi girls. Raise your verbal intonation at the end of a sentence. New Zealand English speakers typically inflect their voices upwards at the end of declarative sentences. Okay, to American and British English speakers, it can sound like Kiwis are asking questions. Again, though, it's not exclusive to New Zealand English. Using New Zealand... Oh my God, what is this? That is the scene from a nightmare. What's happening with her face? Look at her face. I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight after seeing that. Learn some specific New Zealand words. Good advice. Once you have adjusted your English pronunciation to match the New Zealand inflections, you'll need to expand or adjust your vocabulary by learning some new slang. In some cases, New Zealand English speakers repurpose common English words. You'll need to learn those as well. To start with, remember, av. No one from New Zealand says avenue. They'll all say av. I'm just trying to think where the nearest av is. Oh, what's that one on the Monopoly board? Park Ave? Yeah, okay, all right. I'll give them that. Dairy, as well as its association with milk production. Yeah, we call it like what you might call in some countries, like in the US, a convenience store, for example, or what do they call them in the UK, like a corner shop, something like that. News agents. I think they call them news agents. We call them dairy. It's just a small little shop where you can buy, get a loaf of bread, some milk, some snacks, that type of thing. Got to say, though, that dairies are kind of disappearing from New Zealand these days. Slowly, that is. The few dairies that are around are getting ram-raided by punk kids. Batch, holiday home. Yeah, notice the spelling. It's not bark. Yeah, batch is a holiday home, or in the South, they refer to it as a crib, I do believe. A chili bin, also known as a cooler. What do they call it in Australia? I think it's an esky. Is that right? An esky? Jandals. Okay, there's classic New Zealand vocab. Flip-flops or thong footwear. Yeah, I know they call them thongs in Australia. Manchester. Yeah, we do call Bedlin in Manchester. I wonder why that is. Is it something to do with Manchester? Did they make them in Manchester or something? Lollies, sweets or candies. Yeah, that's true. Shonky, mild profanity, not as bad as munted. Shonky. I've heard that word before. I wouldn't say it's mild profanity, and I wouldn't say it's that common either. I guess shonky means like broken or a bit dodgy. What's a good example? Like, my dad built a new fence around the garden. It's a bit shonky, like it wouldn't be very straight, or it's a bit wobbly or something. Yeah, I just don't think that's very common. Munted, now there's a good word. I haven't heard it that much recently, but I remember when I was a bit younger, you used to hear munted quite a lot. It was quite popular for a while. It means, not good, less vulgar than rooted. Well, that's true. Munted. You can also use munted to describe a person. Well, you'd call a person munty, like, oh, yeah, he looks a bit munty, like he's a bit weird looking. But it's munted, it's broken. Oh, geez, my car's munted. Rooted. Now, this is a pretty rough word. Bit of a bogan word. Bogan, there's another term that you might not have heard of before. Bogans are, I don't know, for want of a better word, white trash. Rooted, a vulgar term used in place of the F word. For example, that's rooted. You got to say it like a Kiwi. That's rooted. Means the item in question is no longer in working order. Yeah, it's rooted, mate. Stoked, very pleased. I mean, again, is that what the kids are saying these days? I mean, I'm hardly the person to speak here, but even when I was a teenager, stoked was a bit cliche. I was stoked. Oh, I got a box of Cody's for my birthday. I was stoked. Stoked, mate. It's a little bit of a bogan word, I reckon. Haven't heard that in quite a while. Quite nice. Was that supposed to be a New Zealand phrase? Quite nice. Don't be fooled by false cognates. These are words and phrases in New Zealand English that sound similar to phrases in British or American English, but actually have contradictory meanings. Quite nice has a contradictory meaning? Quite nice. Something that is unpleasant. Oh, your hair looks quite nice. Well, I think if someone's using quite nice and they actually mean something unpleasant, they're a bit of a biatch, if you ask me. To have a mare, to make a fool of yourself, is that short for nightmare? I haven't heard anybody say this around me. Nah, I'm not buying it. I haven't heard that myself. Sounds a bit Australian, if you ask me. Sweet as. Oh yeah, this is a good New Zealand phrase actually. Agreed or good. This phrase is occasionally confused by non-Kiwis as being a compliment to the bottom. As does not mean ass or arse when used in casual conversation. Yeah, sweet as, you can use that quite a lot. Yeah, nah. Oh, this is a really good one. No, thank you. Kiwis say yeah, nah when they want to say no without giving offense. That's true. A really good example of if this, I get, who checked this? A really good example of this is when a Kiwi is offered another alcoholic beverage. Have another beer, bro. It's not late. Answer, yeah, nah. Meaning I'd like another drink and have considered accepting, but I really shouldn't. Yeah, it sums it all up, really, how indecisive and indirect New Zealanders actually are. It's incredibly confusing for foreigners visiting New Zealand. What is it? What do you want? Yes or no? Do you want another beer or not? Just say yes or just say no. The rellies, short for relatives. No, I've heard Aussies say this. I haven't heard many Kiwis say this. If anything, Kiwis might say cuzzies, as it's short for cousins, like your extended family. Not rellies. Yeah, it's an Aussie thing. Prepare for abbreviated versions of common words. New Zealand English speakers are notorious for abbreviating words. Listen for this, and don't be surprised if you hear familiar words chopped in half, often with the suffix "ease" added. For example, you may hear someone say they'll visit their rellies. I've been through this. I don't think people say rellies at all. After they eat brekkie. Yeah, brekkie, bicky, short for biscuit. Aussie, short for Australia. There's a whole heap more. I mean, yeah, people use these fairly often. You don't use them all the time, though. Develop a rudimentary understanding of Māori. There's a few Māori words here and there in everyday Kiwi English. But I don't know what's happening to our mate here, though. He looks like he might be having a bit of a heart attack, really. Yeah, call him an ambulance. All right, well, there you go. That was a lesson in how to speak New Zealand or speak like a Kiwi. What do you think? Did WikiHow do a great job? Did Andrea Thompson do a good job? You know what? Let's give Andrea Thompson a rating. Let's go way back up to the top of this article and click a start a vote. You know what? I will give it 3, possibly helpful. I think she's just a bit off some things. I think she's mixing up some Australianisms with New Zealand isms. Anyway, what do you reckon? Did you learn how to speak New Zealand English from this video? If you did, let me know. If you didn't, let me know. Or maybe you want some more lessons in how to speak like a Kiwi. If you do, tell me in the comments section. Welcome back to another video. And in this video, we're going to continue on that theme of, can foreigners do a New Zealand accent? You might have seen one of my other videos called Why Can't Americans Do a New Zealand Accent? Which I did throw in a few Brits in there. I was cheating a little bit, but you know what I mean, right? And you would have seen or heard that it's quite difficult, especially for Americans it seems, but just anyone in general really, maybe even New Zealanders too, to do a convincing New Zealand accent. So I found a few more videos of what seems to be mostly Americans, and I've thrown a couple of Brits in there as well, trying to do a New Zealand accent. We're going to start off with this video. It's by a woman called Amy. Her channel's called Accents with Amy, and she claims that she can give you tips on how to do a New Zealand accent. Let's see how she goes.
Welcome to Accents with Amy for your tip of the week.
All right, straight off the bat, that does sound pretty Kiwi to me. Let's carry on.
So, this is a Kiwi or New Zealand accent tip.
Oh, she had me for most of that there, but when she said New Zealand, she said it kind of weird.
And I spoke last week about Australian versus Kiwi accent, because a lot of people ask, what's the difference? So this time I'd like to focus mostly on the...
It's good to see that she does recognise the difference between New Zealand and Australian accents.
And I experience it sort of like a bird, like these short little things, and it's quite sweet and pleasant and, polite.
So she's saying New Zealanders sound quite polite. That's interesting. And that we sound kind of like a little bird chirping.
In New Zealand, when I lived there, I lived in Wellington, and I worked at what used to be called the Regency Cinema Lounge. And
when she went into a New Zealand accent, then it did sound a little bit weird. Again, the way she says New Zealand and then she said Wellington, kind of funny as well.
So it was part of a cinema, but it was the upper floor, and there was a lounge and a sort of a wee kitchen and bar, and you could order drinks and food and things to be brought into your lazy boy recliner chair.
Okay, I've heard quite a bit of her speaking in a New Zealand accent so far, and I'm going to say she's pretty good. I've got a couple of little nitpicks though. Like I said, the way she says New Zealand is a little bit weird, and some of her vowel sounds are a little bit overdone, I think. Okay, I've got to say, Amy's pretty good at a Kiwi accent. She's not perfect, but then again, few non-New Zealanders are. But I think she'd convince a lot of people. She had me convinced at the start. There's only a couple of things she says like sound a little bit unusual to a New Zealander, I think. But overall, very good. I'm going to give Amy 4.5 LMPs out of 5. Next up, we've got someone called Maryland. Mary, I guess her name's Mary. Maryland says that she likes doing other accents, and she's going to show us a New Zealand accent in this video. So I'm quite excited to hear, can she actually do it or not? Let's see what she's got.
So I'm going to do the rest of this video in my accent that I will show you, which is, today's accent is a New Zealand accent.
Do the whole video.
I will
Wow.
introduce myself as a New Zealander. Hello there, I'm Meryl, and today, and actually I'm from New Zealand if you can't tell from my voice, but I really think that the easiest way to think of a New Zealand accent is actually like it's a bit of a British accent combined with a nasally tone.
Ooh. All right, sorry, Meryl. I don't want to sound mean or anything. I think you were doing quite well in a few things, but it did sound a bit Australian to me. And then when you said tone like that, that sounded really weird. Let's see if she gets any better.
There are certain words that sound more New Zealand-ish or Kiwi-like than others, and honestly, I'm still working on my accent, so bear with me. However, I think one way to understand the New Zealand accent is to try to kind of speak through your nasally voice.
That's interesting. Do we all speak through our nasally voice, as she puts it? I can think of one or two teachers I had in the past who definitely did sound a bit nasal now that I think about it. But yeah, what do you reckon? Do all Kiwis sound nasal?
And also in the back of your throat.
Yeah, she hasn't got the vowel sounds right, but she's giving it a go. You know, good on her.
Try to focus. Try to focus the sound in your sinuses, right? And saying right after a lot of things kind of helps. So one thing I'm gonna do for you right now is
she sounds like an old primary school teacher I used to have. Right now?
So one thing I'm going to do for you right now is to get the accent challenge words. Ent, roof, root.
Ent? I thought she was saying ent, like those characters out of Lord of the Rings. Ents.
Theatre, iron, semen, camel.
Sorry, what? Camel?
Fire, water, New Orleans, pecan.
Pecan? I don't want to give Mary a hard time here. She's giving it a bloody good try.
Both, again, probably. That word is really a good word to start with. Probably.
That's not bad. She said probably pretty good there in a Kiwi accent.
Really helps your accent. Alabama.
There's one thing we Kiwis often talk about. It's Alabama. Alabama?
And also to go up at the end. Notice that? Alabama?
Yeah, she's got a really good point there. She's doing a good job on that rising intonation that a lot of Kiwis speak in.
I like that. Lawyer. Coupon, mayonnaise, pajamas, court. That sounded British, sorry. Oh, this is a good one. Naturally.
All right, a little bit heavy on the accent there, but naturally, she's in the ballpark. I'll give her that.
Naturally.
Okay, she gave it a really, really good try. She's still got a lot of work to do, though. I feel like she's probably watched a couple of episodes of Flight of the Conchords. It's really, really overdoing a lot of the stereotypical Kiwi accents you might hear in that show. Overall, yeah, it's not the best, but she did say she's just starting out doing the Kiwi accent. So, yeah, nice job. I'm going to give her 2 LMPs out of 5. It's a good start. It's a good start. Okay, so next we have a guy called Ed. He's got a channel called Lean English Pronunciation. So he's some sort of English teacher, maybe a voice coach, I'm not sure. Ed appears to be from England, so not an American. Let's see if he can do a Kiwi accent a bit better than some of our American friends have so far.
Kia ora. In this video...
Ooh, okay, so that was a little bit... his kia ora. I'm no expert when it comes to Māori myself, but kia ora.
The best man visits the fair. In New Zealand is likely to be pronounced the best man visits the fair.
Okay, that wasn't too bad. Let's stick with Ed, see how he goes.
So a phrase like a third murder in New Zealand is likely to be pronounced a third murder.
Okay. I think he started off quite well with that first sentence, but this one, that sounded really weird. A third murder. Yeah, no, that's not good.
Lunch in the garden on Tuesday in New Zealand is likely to be pronounced lunch in the garden on Tuesday.
Okay, that's a little bit better, but it doesn't quite sound like a Kiwi to me.
They cured my toe in New Zealand is likely to be pronounced they cured my toe.
First of all, what a weird thing to say. I don't know what's happening with his toes, but he said like, they cured my toe. Yeah, I'm not buying Ed's Kiwi English so far.
So a phrase like the water level in New Zealand is likely to be pronounced the water level.
Yeah, that's a little bit better than his last sentence, but he said water a little bit funny. The water level.
So in New Zealand, you might hear something like, Kia ora, do you want a lift to the batch? Cheer, my car's carked it. Sweet as. Don't forget your jandals.
Yeah, sorry. No, Ed just sounds like an English guy trying to do a little bit of a New Zealand accent, but he's just, to me at least, he just sounds like a Brit who's maybe recognised a couple of features about the New Zealand accent, which is interesting because I thought a Brit might do a bit of a better job than, say, an American at doing a Kiwi accent. He's obviously an English teacher and he knows a lot about linguistics, so he knows a lot about the different sounds. He just doesn't know how to say those sounds. All right, Ed, I'm afraid I'm only going to give you 1 LMP out of 5. Okay, let's listen to another American this time. Her name's Kelly, and she says she's an actor and speech coach.
Let's go through a few examples with some practice words and phrases.
Ooh, okay. We're not off to a good start here. Was that supposed to be her New Zealand accent?
Ask, class, answer, rather, after, pass. Prancer and Dancer ate raspberries.
That sounded very, very English to me. That just sounded like a very generic English accent.
Fat, apple, gallon, Africa, have, candy.
Yeah, not good. Her sound is, yeah, quite off. I can give it a go myself. Fat, apple, gallon, Africa, have candy.
Sam gave the man some cash to get his hat back.
She sounded a little bit more Kiwi in that last sentence. It was a little bit better.
Let's go through some practice. Lid, kept, epic, knit, heather, vegetable, confession. Eric's pens left an inky mess.
Eric's pens left an inky mess. I reckon she wasn't too far off there.
The apprentice tenor trembled with tension.
Okay, in the next sentence, yeah, she's kind of slipping again.
Well done.
Sorry, what? Wheel done?
Lip, ship, trip, sick, dig, until, which, vision. Ingrid has itchy, damaged skin.
Yeah, okay, not too bad.
Philip is intensely irrational.
Philip is intensely irrational. Good one, Philip. Yeah, these two sentences she says, she's a little bit better than she was at the start, but the more I hear her speak, I don't think she can do a New Zealand accent at all. I'm not throwing any shade at her. I mean, she's giving it a really good try, but she says she's a voice acting coach. And I think if you're going to hire a voice accent coach, that coach should be able to do the accent first. 1 LNP out of 5. Sorry about that accent, quickie. Okay, next we've simply got a video titled New Zealand Accent Tutorial. It's by a channel called School of Acting Online. Let's check it out.
Hello guys, today I am going to do another accent.
Okay, so straight away this video reminds me of one of those hostage videos you see where a bunch of terrorists are shooting a ransom video with one of their hostages shot right in front of a wall. He's got that look of fear in his eyes. I hope he's all right.
This one is easy enough to do.
Really?
Because
easy. Let's
when you're
see.
a professional actor, you find accents like this pretty easy to do. Because you do them every day.
All right, he does a New Zealand accent every day. Let's see how he goes.
So, the accent I'll be doing today is New Zealand. Yeah.
All right, nods his head like a Kiwi.
Here I go.
Don't be so nervous.
Yeah, what's up, guys? No, it's just park and no, it's just chilling, mate. Those Kiwis down there are proper messes, yeah. And no, just playing rugby down the park, and no, just chilling. Yeah.
I don't know what he's saying. Can any of you guys actually figure out what he's trying to say?
Yeah, he's pretty cool, yeah. But yeah, we'll go down some other day. It was a nice day, it was sunny, so yeah, I can't see why not.
So that was that.
That was the best accent ever. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't a New Zealand accent. I don't think that was even an accent from this planet. Oh God, that was good. I mean, not good.
That was flawless. And it'll help you. Like, I hope it will help you.
I'm not exactly sure what he wants to help us with. I guess it's whether you want to sound like some sort of weird alien or not.
So, like, please subscribe. Like the video. And
oh, this video is the best.
If these tips.
Oh, okay, I got to cut it there. I don't know this guy's name. It's got to be a joke, right? Surely that has to be a joke. I don't know. It's a great accent. It's just not any particular type of English accent whatsoever. I couldn't even figure out what he was trying to say. Could you? Oh man, but one of the best videos I've seen on YouTube in a long time, actually. So for the New Zealand accent, I'm afraid he doesn't get any LMPs out of 5. But you know what? In terms of entertainment, this is pure gold, and he gets 1 cookie time. Well played, sir. Well, there you go. So out of that little contest of who could do the best New Zealand accent, I think it's fair to say that Accents with Amy. Amy was the winner. She got what? What did I give her? 4.5 LMPs out of 5? Well done, Amy. I think if we've learned anything about doing a New Zealand accent, or just trying to do accents in general, is that it's very, very hard. So hats off to everyone who tried, even this last guy here, who was thoroughly entertaining, if anything. All right, what did you reckon? Who had the best New Zealand accent out of this bunch? Can you do a New Zealand accent if you're not a New Zealander? Tell us about it in the comments section. Welcome to another video. In today's video, we're going to look at some common New Zealand slang words. Maybe you're new to New Zealand, and if you learn these, you'll be as Kiwi as shorts and jandals on a winter's day. Let's get right into it and look at the first word we're going to learn, and that is auntie. Now, an auntie isn't just your actual aunt. They can be any woman in your circle who's at least 10 years your senior. All power and authority is deferred to your auntie. Here in New Zealand, aunties are superhuman beings who can break up fights between grown men, and even a mention of one's auntie being disappointed in you has the power to even prevent crime. For example, have you been stealing lollies from the dairy? Wait till I tell your auntie. Hiding. The next word is something your auntie will give you if you're having a carry-on, which is misbehaving. As in, you kids better not be causing trouble or I'll give you a hiding. Also known as a smack or a bash. In other countries, you might just call that a beating. Boss. This is a good one if you want to get on the good side of working class or blue-collar workers here in New Zealand. Show your respect or solidarity to the working class, usually a man, in New Zealand by greeting him or referring to him as boss. For example, you go up to a supermarket worker and say, "G'day boss, got any more of those size 9 chickens out the back?" Bro tip. You'll score even more points if you greet them with a sort of truck driver's wave. You know that one where you sort of raise your arm up for half a wave but you just stick a stiff forearm out? Yeah, that's the one. Chur. This is a pretty important one. It basically means thanks, good, nice, or even yes in some situations. Here's some examples. If someone asks you, "Want a drink?" you can just answer, "Chur," which means both yes and thanks. It can even show you're really excited about something like, "Chur, check out a sweet new car." Want to sound extra friendly? Stick bro at the end of it. Like, if someone offers you a piece of their KFC, you can say, "Chur, bro." Ow. Now, I'm not exactly sure how this word, or even if it is a word, how it's spelled, really. It's more of a noise than a word. Stick it at the end of a sentence for emphasis, like, "I told you to shut up, ow." Or even start a sentence with it, like, "Ow, what are you doing?" A classic one you'll hear in New Zealand sometimes is, "Not even ow," which means no or not true. Cool story. Basically, anything that's not a cool story. You know how you go to work on a Monday and Brenda in accounts might tell you something she did on Sunday like, "I had to drive up to Caddy to pick up my lawnmower because my sister's cousin was sharpening it for me, but when I got there, they weren't even home. Even though I told them I was coming at 4, I didn't tell them I was annoyed, but I had a bloody good moan about it to my husband in the car." Cool story. Yeah, nah, yeah. Now this confuses a lot of people when they hear New Zealanders talk. You'll hear it quite a lot too. Does it mean yes or no? It depends. If someone says yes first, like, "Yeah, nah," they probably mean no. If they say, "Nah, yeah," they probably mean yes. Kiwis love being indirect and indecisive, so master yeah, nah, yeah, and you'll be one of us in no time. Or maybe not. Sweet as. Another really common expression that means nice or good, or thanks sometimes, or even you're welcome. Here's a couple of examples. "I'll come and pick you up after work." "Oh, sweet as." Or, "I think we should go buy some drinks before we go out tonight." "Yeah, sweet as, sounds good." Munted. If something's broken, you can say it's munted. Like, "My cousin crashed my bike on the weekend, now it's munted." You could also describe someone who's really drunk as munted. There's also such a thing as a munter, which is a person who's either a bit ugly, looks sloppy, or is just a bit slow or dumb. You'll know a munter when you see one. Anyway, there you go. If you want to become a New Zealander, and who doesn't really, you better at least learn these words. Do you know any other good New Zealand slang or expressions? Tell us about them in the comments. I'll see you next time.